I was raised by a father who trusted the government. I was a teenager when Watergate happened, and I remember my dad saying, "The president has good reasons for doing what he did. We just can't know what they are. He knows a lot of secret things that we don't know, and I trust that he had his reasons and that they were good, and we may never know what they were." My mother did not trust the government. She had been raised in India, and she told us that you have to leave gifts for the postman, otherwise he will lose your mail. She once called down to the police station for something, probably a speeding ticket because she had a lead foot. She called down to the police station and she said, "I have to come pay my ticket. How late are you open?" And they were like, "Lady, this is the police. We're always open." She was very surprised because in her town in India, the police station was open quite irregularly and you had to also pay the police. She loved the American Revolution, though. She was a revolutionary to her soul. I had a British teacher for American history in 9th grade at the school where I went. And she asserted that the Boston Massacre was a group of scared 17-year-old British boys who were alone in a strange country, and the colonials had wrapped rocks in snow and had been throwing the great big rocks at these scared boys' heads, so of course they had to open fire. My mother was so mad when I told her that story that she called the school, even though she herself was a teacher and didn't really approve of parents calling the school to complain about teachers. My father's 3 other siblings were politically more radical. My Aunt Ruth, for example, used to grow pot under her piano with grow lights. I think I've told you that before. She had 7 children, so God bless her, she needed it, whatever. She would not put her social security number down on anything, not in a doctor's office, not on a form, nowhere she would put her social security number, because she just didn't want the government knowing what all her business was. And everybody thought it was ridiculous until recent revelations. Their other sister, Dorothy, moved to Nicaragua to be a translator for the Sandinista government from Spanish to German and back to Spanish again. So my dad felt that both his sisters had been duped by the communists. I had college professors who were duped by the communists too. They taught us about how the US government had supported certain corporations playing Goldilocks in South and Central America. They said we had not been good guests in many countries into which we had moved. Once they started lining it out for us, it was hard not to see corruption everywhere. We were taught about the origin of the term banana republic, which is a contemptuous term for a country where the government is a puppet dictatorship set up to serve the dictator and the companies for whom he works. The United Fruit Company was frequently mentioned in these classes. They were accused of bribing government officials from the beginning of the 20th century in Central and South America in exchange for their support for giant banana plantations. They were accused of exploiting their workers, paying negligible taxes to the government of those countries, and working ruthlessly to suppress land rights for people who farmed the land of those countries. Latin American journalists referred to the company as El Pulpo, the octopus, and its exploitation of workers was used by communist activists to illustrate the concept of capitalist imperialism. Once you start to see the connections, it's hard to unsee them. Senator, then Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, in the Eisenhower administration, was sternly anti-communist. The more you learn, though, the more his motives seem, I couldn't decide on the word here, his motives seem complex, corrupt. His law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, negotiated the land giveaways to the United Fruit Company in Guatemala and Honduras. His brother, Alan Dulles, did legal work for the United Fruit Company and sat on its board of directors. Alan Dulles was named the head of the CIA under the Eisenhower administration. Both Dulles brothers were on the United Fruit payroll for 38 years while they were in government service. Conflict of interest? Henry Cabot Lodge, who was U.S. ambassador to the UN, owned a big chunk of United Fruit stock. Ed Whitman, the United Fruit public relations man, was married to Ann Whitman, Eisenhower's personal secretary. Are you starting to see the lines here? Most of these are from a book called The Fish That Ate the Whale by Rich Cohen. The company claimed they needed a bunch of extra tracts of land because hurricanes and blight. So they held a lot of undeveloped land and worked tirelessly on the government to restrict land rights for farmers who wanted a share of the banana business. The United Fruit Company also dominated regional transportation networks through its international railways of Central America. They branched out in 1913 and created the Tropical Radio and Telegraph Company. They did improve a lot of ports. They did build schools for the people who worked for them. They did pour millions into the economies, although they were in enclaves. They poured millions into the areas where their people lived, and the schools were funded who taught in ways that were approved by the company. In 1954, the democratically elected Guatemalan government was toppled by US-backed forces. The United Fruit Company was the only corporation at that time that had a CIA code name. United Fruit was the largest Guatemalan landowner and employer, and that government they overthrew was about to implement some land reform and expropriate 40% of the United Fruit land. This is just one tiny little example of how the United States has destabilized other countries around the world, not just South and Central America, for the betterment of stockholders of certain corporations. Here's what I'm not saying. Corporations are evil. Not saying that. I'm saying certain corporations spent lots of money on governments who probably were corrupt already, but encouraging the corruption and using that money in order to advance their own business interests at a terrible cost to the people who already lived in the country. I think we've done that recently. I don't want to go into that, though. That's over in the Middle East, and we don't have time to go into it. U.S. has been Goldilocks in many different countries. And again, this is just my opinion. These are facts that I have picked up. These are from my college professors, and you do not have to believe what I'm saying at all. But I feel like the U.S. has been a bad guest. I think it's as if the U.S. was Goldilocks, only if Goldilocks had come into the bear's house and taken what she wanted, cherry-picked the best of everything, broke some things, and instead of running away when the bears got home, she bribed the bear government to make it legal for her to go into whatever bear house she wanted to go into and take whatever she wanted. And when the bears tried to protest, the government put them in jail. Here's the story I would like to pair with the story of Goldilocks. The title of this sermon is Goldilocks and Elijah. Elijah does have some bears in his story. Elijah is a good example here because Elijah is not a sweet person. He was an Old Testament prophet, meaning that he was very irritating to everyone and telling them what they were doing wrong and having visions and being suppressed by both the government and the religious people. But, okay, so one story is that there were these boys who were following Elijah, and they were calling him a bald old man. They were taunting him. I'm glad kids don't do that anymore. But they were taunting him and yelling at him, and he got irritated and called 3 bears to eat them up. And they did. That's in the Bible. And the lesson is, don't taunt bald old men with a special relationship with bears. But in this Elijah story, he was the angel that was entertained unawares. Okay, so there is this couple who's very poor, and at 10 o'clock one night, the woman gives birth to their first child. The husband says, honey, I'm so worried that this child is going to be too cold because all we have is a little bit of straw for him to lie down on. We don't have any wool to wrap him in. We don't have any food to feed him. I worry that he's going to die. And his wife is worried as well. A knock comes on the door. A threadbare guy comes to the door and says, please, do you have a little straw? I could borrow. My wife just had a baby and we don't have any straw for the baby to lie down on. And so they say, of course, take some of this straw. They give him some straw. He wraps it in his prayer shawl and he goes out the door. Then he throws the straw down on the ground right outside the door. But they don't see him do that. In the morning, they go outside the door and they see there's this pile of gold and silver coins outside their door, and they gather it up and they say, that guy, he was Elijah. He wasn't a poor neighbor. He was Elijah, and he's given us all of this gold. Let's go buy a house. So they go to a nearby city where housing values are good, and they buy a house. They take their child and they move into the house, and they find in the house there's a little bulge in one of the walls, and the wife touches the bulge and the wall opens and there's a huge bunch of gold and silver in there. And they say to the guy who sold them the house, you sold us this house, but it has all this gold and silver in there. Surely you need it. And he says, no, I'm the same guy you gave the straw to. The money outside your door was your son's luck. The house was your luck, he says to the guy. And the gold and silver in the wall, that's your wife's luck. Because I'm Elijah, and you were kind to me. And then he ascends into heaven, like Elijah does. We have been asked to provide sanctuary for a guest. There's nothing like a genuine call to ministry to snap things into focus. By now you may have heard that we have been offered the opportunity to take a Guatemalan LGBT activist in and provide her with sanctuary until her deportation order is lifted. She is eligible for a visa called a U visa, since she has been helpful to police here in prosecuting a crime. Her lawyer missed a paperwork deadline, so she spent 7 months in detention before her partner, who is also undocumented and a trans person, could raise the money for the required $15,000 bail bond. She must appear for deportation on June 11th. The police are documenting her help in prosecuting these bad guys, but they will not be finished with their documentation until 90 days have passed. I'm giving you my best interpretation of the story as I understand it. The request for sanctuary was brought to us on Tuesday. The board meeting was that night, and I want to tell you about the board meeting. Your board of trustees preached to me. And I'm going to try to tell you this without weeping. I came to the board meeting, and I sat down, and I said, I have to talk to you about something really important. Here's what we've been asked to do. I am uncomfortable. I feel rushed. I feel pushed. I'm not sure we should do it. I would like to get everything in order. I was a Presbyterian for many years. And Presbyterians do things decently and in order. I feel like we need to get everything in order. I feel like we need to build our new building, maybe put a room in there, a shower in there. We need to put this off. I don't know. And some board members were nodding, yeah, I think you're right. I feel pushed too. I don't know. Then one person said, I think we should do it. And there were nods. And there was a whole conversation, a rich, soul-searching conversation. And then one of your board members said, this fits exactly with our mission. If we don't do this, then what do we do? So we said yes. I would like to start a conversation with you all about whether we would like to just do this one time or whether we would like to become a sanctuary church, since it seems that the sanctuary movement of the 80s is being reborn. I talked twice on Saturday with my Presbyterian colleague, Jim Rigby. He said, what are you guys going to do? And I said, we're saying yes. And he said, oh. My session, which is equivalent to the Board of Trustees, they said they wanted to prepare more. They said they wanted to think about it. They wanted to get ready for it. They wanted to do it. I said, decently and in order? And he said, yeah. He said, Meg, I'm going to tell them on Sunday that the prophetic moment came and the Unitarians said yes and then figured out how to do it. And that we missed it because we wanted to figure out how to do it before we said yes. Much more will be communicated with you all, and conversation will begin with us about the whole sanctuary movement. This is an ancient tradition of being a sanctuary. There is no law on the books about this, but there is a custom that governments do not come into churches since ancient times to take someone out. And I would like to introduce her to you. Sulma, will you come up? Mary Patrick, are you here? Hi. Sulma, come on up here. Just say hello and say in Spanish something.
Hi, everybody.
En español, si quiere.
Okay. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Zulma. La reverenda ya les explicó que soy de Guatemala. Dios les bendiga.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sulma. As the Reverend said, I am from Guatemala.
I want to say, quiero decir otra vez, Dios les bendiga.
I just want to say another time, God bless you all.
Nadie ha dicho nada. Yo esperaba decir, yes, amen.
She just wants to say amen like all of you said.
Yeah. mis papás también son pastores. Cuando alguien llega al púlpito y dice, Dios les bendiga, esperamos decir, amén, porque está recibiendo bendición.
Her parents taught her that when somebody says from the pulpit, God bless you, that everyone should say amen to receive the blessing.
Amen.
Amen. God bless you. Ok, gracias por recibirme. Estoy acá, espero recibir su apoyo y sé que son una gran familia para mí.
Thank you so much for receiving me. I'm grateful to receive your support, and I'm ready to be here with you all.
Thank you. Please research online the sanctuary movement if you'd like to know more about the history of it. We are looking very much forward to Sulma being part of our community. She wants not to be that woman we are helping, but she wants to be a part of the community. She's got a degree in psychology. She's ran groups for LGBTQ folks in Guatemala, which is why she had to flee. And she would like to run LGBTQ groups here as well for immigrants. And that fits exactly within our mission as well. So Chris Jimerson is going to be in coffee hour. Chris used to run a nonprofit, an immigration nonprofit, and he'll be happy to answer questions. And I will also be there, and I'll be happy to answer questions. Please don't ask Sulma to explain anything today. We want to keep that burden off of her and just welcome her. And Chris and I will do our best to explain whatever we can explain. And Sulma, is your partner here today, or can we meet Gavin? Not here today, okay. All right. We cannot pretend that we all agree about immigration laws. We are not unanimous as a congregation. We have many different opinions, and yet we have this opportunity to step up and help our new friend, which we are going to do. Either just this once or on an ongoing basis according to you all and your vote about it. Please rise and let us join together in hymn number 1007, There's a River Flowing in My Soul.